At 7:42 on the morning of September 19, 1944, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper stood in the open turret of his M18 Hellcat on Hill 246 near Ericourt, France, watching a German tank gun muzzle emerge from fog so thick he could see barely 30 feet in any direction. 26 years old, 3 months commanding a tank destroyer platoon, 0 engagements against Panther tanks. The German 113th Panzer Brigade had sent 45 Panther tanks and 36 Panzer Mark IVs toward the 4th Armored Division's command post that morning. Leiper commanded 4 M18 Hellcat tank destroyers, 4 machines that American tank crews had openly mocked since their arrival in France 2 months earlier. The M18 weighed 17 tons. The Panther, approaching through that fog, weighed 45 tons. The M18 carried 13 millimeters of frontal armor, barely enough to stop rifle bullets. The Panther's frontal plate was 80 millimeters of hardened steel. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had received the first production M18 Hellcats in May 1944 while still training in England. Captain Thomas Evans of Company C had watched his men examine the new machines with visible concern. The armor was thinner than the M8 armored car. The turret was open to the sky. One well-placed mortar round would kill the entire crew. The 4th Armored Division had lost 14 Sherman medium tanks and 7 Stuart light tanks in the previous 3 days of fighting around Ericourt. 25 men killed, 88 wounded. Most died when German 75mm and 88mm guns punched through their frontal armor at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. The M18's 76mm gun could not penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at any combat range. Not at 1,000 yards, not at 500 yards, not even at point-blank range. The Army's own tests proved it. To kill a Panther, an M18 crew had to hit the lower gun mantlet and hope the shell deflected downward through the 16mm armor plate above the driver's position, or flank the German tank completely and fire into the thinner side armor. Sherman crews called the M18 a death trap. Tank destroyer crews from the older M10 battalions called it a suicide machine. Buick had designed the M18 to reach 55 miles per hour on roads, the fastest tracked armored vehicle in the war. But speed meant nothing if you died before you could use it. General Bruce's tank destroyer doctrine demanded that M18 battalions exploit gaps in enemy lines, maneuver to advantageous positions, deliver accurate fire, and immediately withdraw before the enemy could return fire. Hit and run. The theory sounded brilliant in staff meetings at Fort Hood, Texas. In combat against Panthers, whose crews had survived 2 years of fighting on the Eastern Front, the theory looked like organized suicide. The German 5th Panzer Army had launched its counteroffensive at dawn on September 19th. Hitler had personally ordered the attack. Stop Patton's Third Army. Recapture the city of Nancy. Drive the Americans back across the Moselle River. The 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades had received brand new Panther tanks straight from the factory. Young crews, inexperienced. But the Panthers themselves were the most feared tanks in the European theater. If you want to see how Leiper's 4 tank destroyers stopped an entire Panzer Brigade, please hit that like button. It helps us share more stories from the men who actually fought this war. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Leiper. At 7:45 that morning, Leiper's 4 M18s reached the crest of Hill 246. Captain William Dwight, a liaison officer from the 37th Tank Battalion, had spotted the German column 15 minutes earlier while driving in his Jeep. He had raced back to Combat Command A's headquarters. Colonel Bruce Clark had given the order immediately. Take a platoon of tank destroyers, get to Hill 246, stop them. Leiper's crews had just dismounted when the first Panther appeared out of the fog at the base of the hill. The German tank was less than 100 yards away. Its long-barreled 75mm gun swept left and right, searching for targets it could not see through the dense morning mist. Sergeant Stacy commanded the lead M18. He had perhaps 15 seconds to make a decision that would either prove the tank destroyer doctrine worked or confirm that the M18 was exactly what everyone said it was. A pathetic machine that would get good men killed for no reason. Stacy's gunner traversed the turret. The electric motor hummed. The M18's turret could complete a full 360-degree rotation in under 20 seconds. The Panther's turret was traversed by hand. It took nearly a minute for a full rotation. That difference was the only advantage Stacy had. The gunner acquired the target. The Panther's hull filled the sight picture. Range, 75 yards. The German crew had not seen them yet. The fog was too thick. Stacy gave the order to fire at 7:46 and 15 seconds. The 76mm gun fired. The shell crossed 75 yards in a fraction of a second. It struck the Panther's right track assembly. The track shattered. The Panther lurched to a halt. Smoke poured from the damaged suspension. The German crew began evacuating immediately. They knew a second shot was coming. Stacy's loader rammed another round into the breech. 7 seconds. The gunner fired again. This round penetrated the Panther's thinner side armor. The tank erupted in flames. The German commander and gunner made it out. The driver and radio operator did not. A second Panther emerged from the fog 30 seconds later. Same position. Base of the hill. Range, 80 yards. The German crew had heard the first engagement. They were scanning for targets. But the fog reduced visibility to almost nothing. The M18's low silhouette made it nearly impossible to spot from below. Stacy's gunner fired without waiting for orders. The shell struck the second Panther's mantlet. The ricochet effect worked exactly as Army Ordnance Specialists had predicted. The shell deflected downward through the thin armor above the driver's compartment. The Panther stopped moving. No fire, no smoke. Just a dead tank with a dead crew inside. Leaper's other 3 M18s had spread across the hilltop, 50 yards between each position. Standard tank destroyer doctrine. Never bunch up. Never give the enemy one target. Sergeant Henry Hartman commanded the M18 on the far left flank. He had been a tank destroyer crewman since the battalion's activation in April 1941. 3 years of training, 2 months of combat. The fog concealed everything beyond 100 feet. German tanks kept appearing at the base of Hill 246, like ghosts materializing from white smoke. The 113th Panzer Brigade was advancing in column formation, one tank behind another. They could not see Leaper's platoon. They could not see the American positions at Aracourt. They were driving blind into an ambush they did not know existed. 3rd Panther, 747. Hartman's gunner acquired it before it reached the bottom of the slope. Range, 90 yards. Single shot through the side armor. The Panther burned. 4th Panther, 748. Leaper's own M18 engaged from the center position. 2 shots. First round missed high. Second round penetrated the turret ring. The Panther's turret jammed. The crew evacuated. 4 men running into the fog, disappearing within seconds. 5th Panther, 749. Stacy's second kill. This one saw them. The German gunner had spotted muzzle flash from the previous engagements. The Panther's long gun began traversing towards Stacy's position. Slow. So slow. The hand-crank traverse felt like torture for the German gunner, who knew he was about to die. Stacy's gunner fired first. The shell struck the Panther's gun mantlet. Penetration. The German tank stopped. No movement. No evacuation. Total crew loss. 5 German Panthers destroyed in 4 minutes. The theory worked. The M18's speed meant nothing in this fight. The turret traverse speed meant everything. That and the fog, which negated the Panther's superior gun range and made every engagement happen at under 100 yards, where the M18's 76mm gun could actually kill. Then, the 6th Panther appeared at 750. This crew had learned from the previous losses. The German tank commander had positioned his Panther hull down behind a small rise. Only the turret was visible. He had a clear shot at Stacy's M18. The Panther fired first. The 75mm shell struck Stacy's M18 on the right side of the turret. The explosion killed the loader instantly. Shrapnel wounded the gunner and commander. The driver and assistant driver were uninjured, but the M18's right track was damaged. The vehicle could still move, but barely. Stacy ordered his crew to withdraw immediately. The driver coaxed the damaged M18 down the reverse slope of Hill 246 toward Aracourt, smoke trailing behind them. German shells landing close but missing. They would make it back to the command post, but Leaper's platoon now had 3 M18s instead of 4, and the German column showed no signs of stopping. Leaper now commanded 3 operational M18 tank destroyers against an enemy force that outnumbered him 15 to 1. The German 113th Panzer Brigade had started the morning with 45 Panthers and 36 Panzer Mark IVs. They had lost 5 tanks in 4 minutes. That left 76 German tanks still approaching through the fog. The 7th Panther appeared at 7:52. Hartmann's crew engaged from the left flank position. Single shot. The shell struck the Panther's engine deck. Penetration through the thinner rear armor. The tank caught fire immediately. Flames climbed 30 feet into the morning air. The crew evacuated. 3 men made it out. 2 did not. 8th Panther, 7:54. Leaper's M18 from the center position. This engagement took 3 shots. First round struck the track. Second round missed. Third round penetrated the turret. The Panther stopped. Crew evacuated successfully. All 5 men running into the fog. The German column had finally realized they were under attack. Radio traffic between Panther commanders increased. Orders were shouted. Engines revved. Tanks began maneuvering. But the fog made coordinated movement impossible. The German crews could not see each other. They could not see the American positions. They could only see muzzle flashes appearing from somewhere uphill in the white mist. 9th Panther, 7:56. Hartmann's third kill. The German tank tried to flank left around the base of Hill 246. The maneuver exposed the Panther's side armor. Hartmann's gunner fired 1 round. Penetration through the sponson. The shell found the ammunition storage. The Panther exploded. Turret lifted 3 feet off the hull. No survivors. 10th Panther, 7:58. The M18 on Leaper's right flank engaged. Commander was Sergeant Miller. Experienced crew. They had trained together since Camp Ibis, California, in 1943. The gunner's first shot missed. The Panther was reversing, backing away from the engagement. The German commander had decided retreat was better than death. Miller's gunner fired again. The shell struck the Panther's mantlet. Deflection shot. The round ricocheted down through the glacis plate. The Panther stopped. Smoke poured from the driver's compartment. No fire. The crew evacuated. 4 men visible. The driver's hatch never opened. At 8:02, the German 113th Panzer Brigade attempted a coordinated assault. 6 Panthers advanced simultaneously toward Hill 246. They were still driving blind. The fog had not lifted. But German doctrine emphasized aggressive action. Attack into the enemy. Close the distance. Use your superior armor. That doctrine worked against Soviet T-34s on the Eastern Front. It did not work against American tank destroyers who had no intention of fighting fair. Leaper's 3 M18s opened fire. Hartmann engaged the leftmost Panther. Leaper took the center. Miller took the right. 3 shots, 3 hits. 3 Panthers stopped in less than 10 seconds. The remaining 3 German tanks tried to retreat, but one threw a track. Crew abandoned it immediately. The other 2 disappeared back into the fog. 11th Panther destroyed. 12th, 13th, all within 60 seconds. The engagement was becoming a slaughter. But the M18 crews knew their luck would not hold forever. At 8:07, a Panther found Miller's position. The German tank had approached from an unexpected angle, uphill from the northeast. It had somehow climbed a ridgeline that American maps showed as impassable for tracked vehicles. The Panther commander had excellent fieldcraft. The German fired first. Range 40 yards. The 75mm shell struck Miller's M18 directly on the thin frontal armor. 13mm of steel offered no protection. The shell penetrated the crew compartment. Miller died instantly. His gunner died instantly. The loader was wounded, but alive. The driver and assistant driver evacuated through their forward hatches. 2 M18s remaining. Leaper and Hartmann. 13 German Panthers destroyed. But the cost was rising. Miller had been with the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion since its activation. 31 years old, married, 2 children in Pennsylvania who would receive a telegram in 3 weeks. The fog began lifting at 8:15. Visibility increased from 30 feet to 100 feet, then 200 feet. The advantage shifted. Panthers could now see targets at ranges where their superior armor and gunpowder mattered. M18s needed close range, needed surprise, needed fog. 14th Panther appeared at 8:20. Hartman engaged immediately. The range was 150 yards, too far for a guaranteed kill, but Hartman's gunner was the best in Company C. He had scored expert on every gunnery qualification since joining the battalion. The shell hit the Panther's turret ring. The turret jammed. Crew evacuated. At 8:23, a Panther engaged Leaper's M18 from 300 yards. The German shell missed, but not by much. It struck the ground 10 feet in front of Leaper's position. Dirt and rocks exploded upward. Shrapnel peppered the M18's thin armor. No penetration. But the message was clear. Stay here and die. Leaper ordered his driver to reposition. The M18 backed down the reverse slope, moved 50 yards left, returned to the crest in a new firing position. The entire movement took 40 seconds. That mobility was why the M18 existed. Shoot and scoot. Never sit still. Never give the enemy a stationary target. The 15th Panther appeared at 8:28. Hartman's crew spotted it approaching from the northwest, range 200 yards. The fog was nearly gone. Visibility had improved to 300 yards in most directions. The German tank moved cautiously, hull down position behind a low stone wall. Only the turret and gun visible. Hartman's gunner acquired the target. The Panther's commander was scanning with binoculars, searching for the American positions that had destroyed 14 tanks in 43 minutes. The German crew had excellent discipline. They were not rushing, not exposing themselves unnecessarily. Hartman's first shot struck the stone wall directly in front of the Panther. The shell exploded. Stone fragments showered the German tank. No damage. But the Panther commander now knew exactly where Hartman's M18 was positioned. The German gun began traversing, slowly. The hand crank limited traverse speed to perhaps 6 degrees per second. Hartman's loader rammed another round into the breach. 6 seconds. The gunner adjusted aim. 2 degrees right, 1 degree down. He fired before the Panther's gun could complete its traverse. The shell struck the Panther's mantlet. Perfect deflection shot. The round ricocheted downward through the thin upper glacis plate. The Panther stopped moving. The turret stopped traversing. No fire, no explosion. Just a dead tank with a dead crew. 15 German Panthers destroyed. 3 M18 Hellcats lost. 2 crews killed. 1 crew wounded and evacuated. The engagement had lasted 46 minutes. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper and Sergeant Henry Hartman remained on Hill 246 with 2 operational tank destroyers. At 8:35, Colonel Clark ordered Leiper to hold position. Reinforcements were moving up. Company C of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was deploying additional M18s to the ridgeline. The German assault had stalled. The 113th Panzer Brigade had lost momentum. Panthers were withdrawing toward Bazages-la-Petite. The morning attack had failed. The fog lifted completely by 900 hours. Visibility extended to over 1,000 yards. The battlefield revealed itself. 15 destroyed Panthers scattered across the approaches to Hill 246. Black smoke columns rising from burning hulls. German bodies visible near several tanks. Crews who had evacuated but not escaped far enough before the ammunition cooked off. Captain Thomas Evans arrived at Leiper's position at 9:15. Evans commanded Company C. He had been with the 704th since Camp Pine, New York in 1942, 28 years old. He examined the destroyed Panthers through binoculars, counted them twice. 15 confirmed kills, against 4 M18s. The kill ratio was better than anyone at Fort Hood had predicted. Evans asked Hartman how many tanks his crew had destroyed. Hartman reported 6 confirmed kills. Evans verified the claims against observed wreckage positions. 6 Panthers in Hartman's engagement sector, all destroyed by flank shots or deflection shots through the mantlet. Textbook gunnery. Hartman's gunner would receive a Bronze Star for this action. Leiper reported 2 confirmed kills. His gunner reported 3, but one claim could not be verified. The destroyed Panther might have been hit by artillery. Combat is confusion. Perfect attribution is impossible. Leeper accepted 2 confirmed kills for his crew. The German 113th Panzer Brigade regrouped south of Aracourt. They had started the morning with 81 operational tanks. They now had 66. 15 Panthers destroyed in less than an hour. The brigade commander reported to 5th Panzer Army headquarters that American tank destroyers were more effective than intelligence assessments had indicated. He recommended avoiding engagement with M18 units unless German forces held significant numerical superiority and good visibility. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had proven something important that morning. The M18 Hellcat was not a suicide machine. It was not a death trap. It was exactly what General Bruce had envisioned, a fast, lethal platform that could exploit enemy vulnerabilities and withdraw before the enemy could respond effectively. But September 19th was only the beginning. The Battle of Aracourt would continue for 10 more days. The German 5th Panzer Army would commit additional panzer brigades. The 111th Panzer Brigade would join the assault. More Panthers, more attacks. The 704th would face them all. Between September 19th and September 29th, Company C of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion would engage German armor in 17 separate actions. They would destroy 39 Panthers and Panzer Mark IVs. They would lose 4 M18s destroyed and 3 damaged. The kill-to-loss ratio would remain extraordinary throughout the entire battle. American tankers stopped calling the M18 pathetic. Tank destroyer crews from M10 battalions stopped calling it a suicide machine. Word spread through Patton's Third Army. The Hellcat worked. The doctrine worked. Speed and maneuverability could defeat heavy armor if crews used proper tactics. Leeper returned to Company C's command post at Aracourt that afternoon. He wrote his after-action report by hand, 23 pages, every engagement timed, every shot documented, range estimates, penetration locations, crew performance notes. The report reached Third Army headquarters within 48 hours. Staff officers studied it carefully. Tank destroyer doctrine would be refined based on Leeper's observations. But Leeper would not remain a lieutenant much longer. By March 1945, he would be promoted to first lieutenant. He would cross the Rhine River on March 24th. He would fight through the Harz Mountains in April. He would survive the entire war and return home to a country that had no idea what he had accomplished on a foggy French hillside in September 1944. The M18 Hellcat had entered combat service in July 1944, 3 months before the engagement on Hill 246. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion received the first production M18s in May while still training in England. They were the guinea pig battalion. Test the new machine in actual combat, report problems, recommend modifications. The M18 weighed 17,700 pounds combat loaded. The Wright Continental R975C1 radial engine produced 400 horsepower. That gave the Hellcat a power-to-weight ratio of 22 horsepower per ton. For comparison, the Sherman medium tank managed 13 horsepower per ton. The Panther managed 13.8. The difference was speed. The M18 could reach 55 miles per hour on paved roads. Actual combat conditions reduced that to perhaps 40 miles per hour on good terrain, 20 miles per hour on rough ground. But even at reduced speeds, the M18 was faster than any other tracked armored vehicle in the war. Soviet T-34s managed 34 miles per hour maximum. German Panthers reached 29 miles per hour. American Shermans topped out at 25. Speed was the M18's primary defense mechanism. The armor could not stop anything. 13 millimeters on the hull front, barely half an inch of steel. The turret armor was slightly better at 25 millimeters, but that was still only 1 inch. For comparison, the M8 Greyhound armored car had 19 millimeters of frontal armor. The M18 was less protected than a scout car. The Panther that Hartmann destroyed at 828 weighed 99,000 pounds, 45 metric tons. The frontal glasses plate was 80 millimeters thick and sloped at 55 degrees. Effective thickness against a perpendicular shot was approximately 140 millimeters. The M18's 76 millimeter gun could not penetrate that armor at any range with standard ammunition. The Army had developed high-velocity armor-piercing rounds, designated T4 HVAP. These rounds used a tungsten carbide core wrapped in aluminum. Muzzle velocity increased from 2,600 feet per second to 3,400 feet per second. The HVAP round could theoretically penetrate the Panther's mantlet at 1,000 yards. But HVAP ammunition remained critically scarce throughout 1944. Tungsten carbide was rare. Production was limited. Most tank destroyer battalions received perhaps 2 HVAP rounds per vehicle per month. Crews saved them for desperate situations. The engagement on Hill 246 was fought entirely with standard M62 armor-piercing rounds. The tactical solution was simple. Do not engage Panthers from the front. Do not engage at long range. Use speed to achieve firing position on the enemy's flank or rear. Use the fog. Use terrain. Use anything except frontal armor, because the M18 had no frontal armor worth mentioning. General Andrew Bruce had designed the tank destroyer doctrine in 1941, before Pearl Harbor, before the United States entered the war. Bruce predicted that future wars would feature massed tank attacks, blitzkrieg tactics, armored columns punching through defensive lines. The solution was not heavier tanks. The solution was fast, mobile tank destroyers that could respond rapidly to breakthrough attempts. Bruce wanted vehicles that could reach 60 miles per hour. He wanted guns that could kill any tank at 1,000 yards. He wanted crews trained to think aggressively. Find the enemy, hit the enemy, withdraw before the enemy responds. Never sit still, never fight fair, never trade shots with heavy armor from static positions. The M18 Hellcat was Bruce's vision made real. 17 tons, 55 miles per hour, 76mm gun. Open-top turret that provided excellent visibility for the crew. Electric turret traverse that gave a 360-degree rotation in 20 seconds. The machine was everything Bruce wanted, except for one critical problem. The gun was not powerful enough. The 76mm M1 gun was the same weapon mounted on later Sherman variants. It fired the same ammunition. It had the same penetration values. Against Panzer Mark IVs, the gun was adequate. Against Panthers and Tigers, the gun was marginal at best. Against the frontal armor of a Panther, the gun was effectively useless unless the crew could achieve a perfect deflection shot through the mantlet. But Leeper's platoon had proven that perfect deflection shots were possible. Hartman had scored 3 deflection kills on September 19th. His gunner understood the geometry. Understand where the shell would ricochet, aim for the mantlet, let physics do the work. The shell deflects downward through the thin upper glacis. The ricochet penetrates into the crew compartment. The Panther dies. This technique became standard doctrine for M18 crews throughout the European theater. Shoot for the mantlet. Do not waste rounds on the glacis plate. Do not attempt frontal penetration. Aim for weak points. Exploit geometry. Trust the ricochet effect. The German response to the M18 was predictable. Avoid close-range engagements. Maintain distance. Use superior gun range. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42 L70 gun could kill an M18 at 2,000 yards. The M18 could only kill a Panther at under 300 yards with standard ammunition. The tactical equation favored the Germans at range. It favored the Americans at close range in poor visibility. September 19th had provided perfect conditions for American tank destroyer doctrine. Dense fog, close range, surprise. Limited visibility that negated German advantages. But those conditions would not repeat often. The Battle of Ericourt continued for 10 more days after Leeper's morning engagement. The German 5th Panzer Army committed additional forces. The 111th Panzer Brigade joined the assault on September 22nd. Fresh Panthers, fresh crews. The same orders: stop Patton, recapture Nancy. Company C of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion fought in every major engagement. September 20th, 21st, 22nd. The M18s were everywhere, defending Juvilliers, covering the approach to Lizy, supporting the 37th Tank Battalion near Bazagne-la-Petite. The Hellcats operated exactly as General Bruce had envisioned. Fast response, aggressive positioning, shoot and scoot. On September 22nd, elements of the German 11th Panzer Division attacked toward Juvilliers at 9:15 in the morning. Heavy fog again, visibility reduced to 100 feet. Hellcats from Company B of the 704th engaged from concealed positions. 3 Panthers destroyed before the German column withdrew. No American losses. The fog lifted by afternoon. German artillery began ranging on known American positions. Panthers advanced with better coordination than they had shown on September 19th. The German commanders had learned. They used infantry screens. They maintained better spacing between tanks. They avoided predictable approach routes. The 704th adapted. M18 crews began using buildings as cover. They would position behind stone farmhouses with only the gun barrel exposed. Fire one shot, reverse out. Reposition to a completely different location before German return fire arrived. The tactic worked because the M18 could accelerate faster than any German tank could traverse its turret. On September 23rd, the weather cleared completely. Visibility extended to over 2,000 yards across the open terrain around Ericourt. Panthers now held the advantage. They could engage M18s at ranges where the Hellcat's gun was ineffective. Several M18s were destroyed that day. Crews learned quickly. Never expose yourself in open terrain. Never engage at long range. Wait for the enemy to close distance or find covered approaches. Captain Evans lost his second M18 on September 24th. German artillery fire. The shell landed directly in the open turret. 3 crewmen killed instantly. The loader survived but lost both legs. He would be evacuated to England within 12 hours. He would never walk again. But he would survive the war and return home to Indiana in April 1945. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroyed its 25th Panther on September 25th, the 30th on September 27th, the 39th and final Panther on September 29th. By the end of the battle, Company C alone had claimed 22 confirmed kills. Companies A and B accounted for the remaining 17. The German 5th Panzer Army withdrew on September 30th. The 113th Panzer Brigade had been reduced from 81 operational tanks to 47. The 111th Panzer Brigade had lost 19 Panthers and 12 Panzer Mark IVs. The attack on Nancy had failed completely. Patton's Third Army held the line. The drive toward Germany would continue. American losses were significant but sustainable. The 4th Armored Division lost 14 Sherman medium tanks destroyed, 7 Stuart light tanks destroyed, 21 additional Shermans damaged but repairable. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion lost 4 M18s destroyed, 3 damaged, 21 men killed, 37 wounded. The kill ratio favored the Americans heavily. 39 German tanks destroyed for 4 M18s lost. That ratio was nearly 10 to 1. No other American armored unit in the European theater achieved comparable numbers. The M18 Hellcat had proven its worth definitively. After Ericourt, demand for M18 battalions increased dramatically. Tank destroyer battalions equipped with the older M10 requested conversion to the M18. General Omar Bradley, who had previously resisted deploying Hellcats with 1st Army, reversed his position. He wanted M18 battalions attached to every armored division under his command. But production was limited. Buick had manufactured 2,507 M18s between July 1943 and October 1944. Then production stopped. The Army had originally planned to produce 8,986 M18s. That plan was canceled. Resources were redirected to the M36 tank destroyer, which mounted a 90mm gun. The 90mm gun could penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at 1,000 yards. The M36 weighed 31 tons, slower than the M18, less maneuverable, but the gun made the difference. Army planners decided that killing power was more important than speed. They were probably right, but the men who fought at Ericourt would argue that the M18 was the finest tank destroyer ever built. Lieutenant Edwin Leeper continued commanding his platoon through October and November. Company C fought in the Lorraine campaign. They supported the 4th Armored Division's advance toward the German border. They engaged German armor near Dieuze, near Fenetrange, near Sarrebourg. The M18s kept killing Panthers. The 704th kept proving that speed and tactics could defeat heavy armor. Then came December, the Ardennes. The Germans launched their final major offensive on the Western Front. Hitler committed his last reserves. Panthers, Tigers, Tiger IIs. The Battle of the Bulge would test every American unit, including the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, including the M18 Hellcat, including Edwin Leeper. The German offensive began on December 16, 1944. 3 German armies attacked through the Ardennes forest, 28 divisions, 200,000 men, 1,400 tanks and assault guns. Hitler's objective was simple: split the Allied armies, capture Antwerp, force a negotiated peace in the West. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was positioned near Saarburg when the offensive began. Orders came through at 0200 on December 17th, immediate displacement north, maximum speed. Third Army was redirecting forces to counter the German breakthrough. The 704th would redeploy to Bastogne. Company C traveled 200 miles in 36 hours. The M18s averaged nearly 40 miles per hour on the approach march. Their speed was finally being used as intended, racing to plug a hole in American lines, arriving before the Germans expected reinforcements. General Bruce's doctrine validated again. Fast tank destroyers responding rapidly to enemy breakthrough. The 704th reached Bastogne on December 19th. The town was already surrounded. The 101st Airborne Division held the perimeter. German forces were tightening the noose. Panthers and Tigers from multiple Panzer divisions pressed the American defenders from every direction. Leeper's platoon was attached to Combat Command B of the 10th Armored Division. They established defensive positions on the northern approach to Bastogne. German armor probed the lines constantly, small attacks, testing American strength, looking for weak points. The M18s engaged whenever German tanks came within effective range. On December 22nd, German Panthers attacked Leeper's sector in force. 12 tanks advancing across open, snow-covered ground. Range started at 1,000 yards. Too far for effective engagement. The M18 crews waited. Let them close. The Panthers approached to 600 yards. Still too far. 500 yards. 400. At 300 yards, Leeper's platoon opened fire. 4 M18s, 12 shots in the first 30 seconds. 3 Panthers destroyed immediately. 2 more damaged and stopped. The remaining 7 Panthers withdrew. They had learned at Aracourt that closing with M18s was dangerous. They apparently had not learned enough. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion fought at Bastogne for 37 days, from December 19th through January 25th. They destroyed 41 German tanks during that period. Panthers, Tigers, Panzer Mark IVs. The M18 crews developed new tactics for winter combat, using snowdrifts as cover, positioning behind frozen hedgerows. Everything was white. Visibility was excellent in clear weather, terrible during snowstorms. The battalion received a Distinguished Unit Citation for actions at Bastogne. The citation recognized exceptional performance under combat conditions against numerically superior forces. 21 men from the 704th received individual decorations: Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, Purple Hearts. Sergeant Henry Hartman received his second Bronze Star for destroying 4 Tigers in a single engagement on January 8th. Leeper was promoted to first lieutenant in March 1945. The promotion came with orders. He would assume executive officer duties for Company C. Captain Evans remained company commander. Leeper would coordinate logistics, ammunition, fuel, maintenance, the less glamorous work that kept tank destroyer battalions operational. The 704th crossed the Rhine River on March 24th. They supported the 4th Armored Division's push into Germany. The combat was different now. German resistance was collapsing. Fuel shortages limited German armor mobility. Ammunition shortages meant fewer Panthers in each engagement. The Wehrmacht was dying. Everyone could see it. April brought the final battles. The 704th fought through the Harz Mountains. They engaged German tanks near Gotha. Near Erfurt, the last Panthers. The last desperate defensive stands by units that knew the war was lost, but fought anyway because orders demanded it. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe ended. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had been in combat for 337 days. From July 12, 1944 through May 8, 1945, they had destroyed 98 German tanks, Panthers, Tigers, Panzer Mark IVs. They had lost 18 M18s, destroyed in combat, 63 men killed, 147 wounded. Lieutenant Edwin Leeper survived. He was 27 years old when the war ended. He had commanded a tank destroyer platoon for 9 months. He had fought at Aracourt, at Bastogne, at the Rhine crossing. He had seen friends die, had written letters to their families. had continued fighting because that was the job. Leeper returned to the United States in August 1945. He was discharged from active duty in September. He went home, he found work, he married, he had children. He lived a normal life that was only possible because men like Sergeant Miller and the loader who lost his legs had paid prices that Leeper carried with him forever. The M18 Hellcat served with the United States Army until 1957. It fought in Korea. It was exported to Allied nations. Yugoslavia used M18s into the 1990s. But the glory days were Aracourt, September 19, 1944. 4 tank destroyers against a Panzer brigade. 15 Panthers destroyed in one morning. That was the day the Hellcat proved everyone wrong. The Battle of Aracourt is remembered as one of the largest tank battles on the Western Front. The 4th Armored Division claimed 281 German tanks destroyed during the entire Lorraine campaign. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion accounted for 39 of those kills. The M18 Hellcat proved that light armor and high speed could defeat heavy armor through superior tactics and crew training. Military historians study Aracourt at staff colleges worldwide. The battle demonstrates principles that remain relevant. Terrain matters, weather matters, visibility matters. A 17-ton tank destroyer killed 45-ton Panthers not because the M18 was better, but because Lieutenant Leiper's crews used fog and terrain to negate German advantages. The United States Army concluded after the war that tank destroyer battalions were no longer necessary. Future conflicts would be fought differently. Tanks would handle anti-tank missions. Specialized tank destroyers were obsolete. The doctrine that General Bruce had championed was officially abandoned in 1946. But the men who fought at Aracourt knew the truth. Specialized vehicles with specialized training could achieve results that general-purpose vehicles could not. The M18 Hellcat was designed for one mission: kill tanks. It accomplished that mission better than any other American armored vehicle in World War II. The kill-to-loss ratio proved it: 10-to-1 at Aracourt, 5-to-1 across the entire European theater. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was deactivated in 1945. The men went home. The M18s were either scrapped or sent to Allied nations. A few survived. Museums acquired them. Collectors restored them. Today, you can see operational M18 Hellcats at the American Armor Foundation, at the Museum of American Armor, at Fort Benning, Georgia. There is a memorial in Aracourt, France, a stone monument erected by the town to honor the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion. The monument stands near Hill 246, where Leeper's platoon fought on September 19th. French citizens maintain the memorial. They remember what the Americans did there. They remember the price that was paid. Captain Thomas Evans survived the war. He returned to Pennsylvania. He rarely spoke about his service. He attended 704th reunions occasionally. He died in 2004 at age 87. His obituary mentioned that he commanded Company C at Aracourt. It did not mention the 39 Panthers his company destroyed. Sergeant Henry Hartman survived the war. He returned to New Jersey. He worked as a machinist for 37 years. He attended every 704th reunion until his death in 1998. He never forgot the 6 Panthers he killed on September 19th. He never forgot the crewmen who died beside him. Lieutenant Edwin Leeper's post-war life remains partially documented. Records show he returned to civilian life in 1945. He appears in a photograph of 704th officers taken in March 1945 at Alzey-Furfeld, Germany. He is third from the left. 27 years old, first lieutenant's bars on his collar, standing with men who trusted him with their lives. What happened to Leeper after the war is less clear. No public records indicate where he settled or what career he pursued. He may have preferred privacy. Many combat veterans did. They served when called. They fought when necessary. They came home and built quiet lives far from the attention they could have claimed. The M18 Hellcat's reputation transformed completely after Aracourt. The machine that tankers had mocked in July became the machine they requested by October. Speed worked. Tactics worked. The doctrine that seemed insane in theory proved brilliant in practice. 17 tons could kill 45 tons if the crew was trained properly and the conditions were right. The lesson from Hill 246 remains simple. Superior equipment does not guarantee victory. The Panther was arguably the best medium tank of World War II. Excellent armor, excellent gun, excellent mobility for its weight class. but 15 Panthers died on a French hillside because American crews fought smarter, used terrain better, exploited conditions more effectively. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about tank destroyer crews who saved lives with speed and tactics. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Edwin Leeper and the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.